we get to each have individual responsibility about how we are showing up, and we have to ask ourselves, the frequency that I'm showing up with and the frequency that I'm speaking from, the frequency that I'm embodying, is this what I would like all of the planet to embody more of? Like, can I, within my own life, within myself, break into a higher frequency energy, or am I going to keep continuing that cycle of the old energy that we've been in? Hello, friends, and welcome back to the podcast. Happy Feb. I can't believe it's February already. I have had such a weird January, and I think a lot of people have as well. I know there's been a lot going on in the world. I record these a little bit ahead of when they come out, so I'm about a week prior, and I'm hoping the energy moves a lot. And if I remember my Feb energy update correctly, I think it's going to be a good month. I hope it's going to be a good month. But sometimes we have to do a lot of breaking down before the positive things can come forward. And that is a concept I've been thinking about a lot recently in my life. This concept of how things have to sometimes break apart or fall apart to come back together. And we're at this stage collectively where we are really witnessing a lot of stuff rising to the surface. And as always, as above, so below, as within, so without. We're always seeing this external reflection of what's going on with our internal patterns. And when I look at themes in my life, I can always look at what's happening out in the world and see that same frequency mirrored. And we have to get curious about that. I was thinking about recently, because sometimes people will comment about the energy updates that we do, and they'll, like, especially when people are new, people are like, I cannot believe how accurate that is. And I think about, for myself, I might listen to an energy update or a random tarot reading on YouTube, something like that, and I think about how it lands and how it resonates. And I'm kind of used to that now. I don't overthink it just because of my understanding of how reality works. But I want to explain it from another lens. There is this one component of you understanding how your reality is created, and what's flowing back to you is a reflection of what you have been focusing on, and a reflection of what your soul frequency wants to show you, a reflection of the lessons you're meant to learn. It's always guiding you ahead of time with themes that need to come up for whatever reason. And so the things that come in your reality are perfectly curated to you based on your frequency and what you need to know, what you need to prepare for, what you're meant to learn, what we're meant to witness, what we're meant to look at. But the other component of it is, speaking as somebody who gives the monthly energy update, for example, or will do collective readings so often. And I even think about this with channeling, and I've had to do a lot of work within myself to be able to really release all of the human expectation and the human judgment. And that is such a big part of being able to do this type of work. Like, you have to be willing and able to put yourself aside and just allow, even if what's trying to flow through you doesn't make sense to your logical mind, or you don't think it's correct. And I had to work through a lot of these layers around, right and wrong, and it being correct. And so much of my, perfectionist, type A overachiever, younger self got to be liberated for me to be able to do this work, because I had to really move beyond that paradigm of right or wrong, of what's correct and what's not. And so much of that was because of a lot of new perspectives I was learning through what I was channeling and talking to other dimensional beings and talking to source directly, and understanding more about our perception of time and reality, and how we're shifting into new realities constantly, and how we are moving into timelines of different earth experiences all the time. And it just made me realize it's like there is this intricate, beautiful, divine mechanism of vibrational matching that's happening all the time, that's delivering the information that's relevant for you. And so with channeling, it's like, it's not really an issue of if it's right or if it's wrong. There's the issue of discerning and setting intention about the frequencies that you're bringing through with truth, with love. But there's also that kind of trust that whoever is going to be in that reality is going to be vibrationally attracted to that message. And there are other messages that aren't relevant for people. And so it might not apply as truth for them. So that's kind of a fancy way, a roundabout way of explaining, when I'm giving an energy update, how does that resonate for people? How can they be so spot on? One is because I'm tapping in specifically to the group of people like in this community that have vibrational resonance. So we're already getting more specific with the timelines we're going to live out. But the other thing is that there are energies and themes that are running through the fields that are going to apply to you. And so if I'm reading energy, I'm reading this larger frequency that's running through the field, it will impact everybody running through that field, even if it might manifest differently for different people. And I think that's a really important thing to kind of sit with. I even think about, and I'm not an astrologer, but I even think about astrologically, I listened to a couple of astrologers just to kind of hear what's going on. And I was listening to this conversation earlier this morning about, hey, well, this was always going to happen. Like, so these energies were always going to happen right now. Did it matter who was in what position? Because the energy was always going to happen. And I think that adds another layer to our perception because people want to blame. And we get so kind of caught up in blaming. And getting caught up in blaming is limiting our ability to perceive the nuances of what's going on. Being able to get in the middle of the gray area and stay open and witness all of it is one of our most important spiritual tasks. And when I speak into, kind of what's going on in the world, I think about what's been going on for me personally. And the background is I've had important relationships in my life falling apart. And I've also noticed certain relationships that I had given a lot of space to over the last few years have been coming back around. And I think, interesting. And a lot of these relationships, like when there's a big release, like for me, there was just this really strong, like this version of us, it isn't working. Like this version of us is in a pattern that's not healthy. And when I read the energy, I can see like the higher version of me and the higher version of you, we have this harmony, but we are both stuck in these versions of ourselves because of our vibrational attachment. We keep showing up in that energetic pattern again and again, and we can't break out of it. And there are always ways, I think, well, actually, I won't even say always. I think that there are usually ways when, set in that dynamic, you can shift the pattern, but it's certainly harder because we're showing up from the place of vibrational patterning. Always we're going to keep dropping in there. It's like that friend, every time you guys hang out, you make, silly, immature jokes. That's just what you do. And every time you're around that person, you notice that part of yourself just comes out naturally. Every time you're around them, you just keep making those silly, immature jokes and you just land into that energy. Or your other friend, or actually, it's a good one, family. It's like a new personality. The old personality comes out every time you go back and you see your family. Maybe you're a little more insecure. Maybe you're a little more buttoned up, or you're a little more, you get triggered a little bit more, right? Like a different version of you is showing up because you're in that energetic patterning, that template that's already been laid. And we can change templates, but to really change a template requires both people to be willing to do that. And it can be easier to separate, come back into calibration with yourself and then see what resonates, right? That's really the only way. And I know for me, there are times when I get kind of swept away in a dynamic and I start to feel like I don't even know what's going on here. Like, is this not resonant? Is this me not being true to myself? Like, what's really the problem? I don't know. And the best way for me to get clarity is to break my attachments and come back into myself and my own energy, and to focus on aligning with love and truth and authenticity with myself, and give myself that recalibration space. And then from there, see how I feel with things. Like, from there, see what's resonating and see what's not. And from there, creating this kind of blank slate where I can set up new patterns. I can set up new guidelines for how I'm going to engage with things, because I am starting fresh in many ways. And that is very much I was giving a talk last week about how do we break cycles, and we have to break energy. Like, we have to break the energetic pattern, like literally break it, so that we can start to shift it. And usually we move through cycles in a roundabout fashion. We keep going in that frequency loop again and again and again. You have to actually break the frequency to create something different. That sounds obvious, right? But think about that in reality and how things play out. When I look at what's going on in the world, people get really caught up in taking a side, and people try to fix the issue of sides being taken and everybody fighting against each other by fighting against each other. That's not breaking an energy. That's not breaking a pattern. Like, you can't jump into a different frequency, and all of us are riding a frequency stream on our earth plane. All of us are in it together in many ways, right? Of what we are contributing to. And we get to each have individual responsibility about how we are showing up. And we have to ask ourselves, the frequency that I'm showing up with, and the frequency that I'm speaking from, the frequency that I'm embodying, is this what I would like all of the planet to embody more of? Like, can I, within my own life, within myself, break into a higher frequency energy? Or am I going to keep continuing that cycle of the old energy that we've been in? And in moments where there's a lot going on, it's just been interesting, because I've had a lot going on personally, and honestly, it's like been a really hard month for me, and I've been crying a lot and moving through a lot. And in those moments, like, I have tools I come back to that I just have to come back to, that are going to guide me through it. And it's a lot of just dropping into my body. It's a lot of not thinking and not logically figuring it out, but dropping into my body and giving myself space, resting, giving myself room to feel my emotions and really feel my emotions, and letting those waves move through, and opening myself to any higher wisdom or higher perspective that's available to me. And I was talking to somebody about this recently. I was talking to my friend Elizabeth Ralph about how a lot of people don't know how to hold space. And a lot of people try to support people or comfort people by doing things that are not supportive and not comforting, even though they're well-intentioned, where there are a lot of situations where people are trying to hold space or trying to support. And the way that they try to support is by kind of shit talking somebody else, right? So it's like, let's say you get in a fight with somebody, and you're just like, hey, I've been having a hard time, I got in this disagreement with blah, blah, blah. And people, like, this is very low frequency. They will try to be supportive by being like, oh, well, that person, they have their own problems and blah, blah, blah. And it's like they're tearing that person down to try to make you feel better. And we're just still locked into a lower vibration. And really, a lot of what we need is just somebody to just literally hold the space. Just like hold the space. And there doesn't have to be blaming, and there doesn't have to be judgment. There can just be holding space for emotion, right? And just like holding space to be heard. And it's even in like how we're expressing and experiencing our emotions. I had to learn when I was younger. I remember like when I was 19, 20 and first doing a lot of my like really deep personal development work, I realized that I was never actually processing energy or my emotions, because I wasn't really processing my true emotions. I was processing my thoughts that had an emotion connected to them. And my thoughts were a lot of me trying to almost make sense of things. Like I had so much tension and friction in my body and my mind about what was going on, that my emotions were so tangled up in low frequency thoughts that were like all rooted in blame and fear and judgment of myself. And it was just all this big mixture. And so I thought that was my emotion. That wasn't actually my emotion. That was a lot of my judgy thoughts. And I wasn't ever actually processing to move through, because I wasn't actually feeling and acknowledging the deeper truth. And so I think about today and, just different personal things I was going through. And I'm like, okay, I just need to let myself feel. And I just need to like let myself be in the waves that I'm in. I need to like not make this about anyone or anything, but just allow myself to feel my emotions, and also open myself, which, took a second, but like, then it's like, I'm just going to open myself up to what's the higher perspective. And that is where a lot of the liberation came from, because I got like so many really important reminders and so many important and helpful messages that were really like calling me up into a higher way of being. But if I was letting myself loop with my thoughts, I probably would just keep myself in a lower frequency, and like the energy would never actually move through. Because whenever we're moving out a lot of energy, we have an opportunity to break out of that vibrational cycle and actually upgrade into a higher way of being. And that's part of the architecture of how we move through cycles and how we can actually break out of them. But most people don't ever actually take that jump into a new frequency. They just keep spiraling in that same energy. And so, then we're seeing everything that's happening on the world stage, and there's a lot going on. And what I would say is, can you really drop into the frequencies of love, like for yourself? Can you really think about, how is it that I want to feel, and how is it that I want people to relate to each other? If I think about love and humility and authenticity and peace, any words along those lines. And let me like really drop into that and ask myself, invite myself to embody that. And from that embodiment, how do I want to move in my own personal life? Because there's a real issue with integrity that I think almost everybody has. It's not judgment, it's just reality. And that integrity is, when we say we have certain values, but we don't always live them out. And look, I think most people don't. But it's and again, it's not a judgment. It's just like, hey, that's actually where we can bridge that gap, right? I say that I really want peace, and I think most of us, we want peace on the planet. Are we living in a state of peace? Are we coming from a state of peace? That's the thing. As above, so below. As within, so without. Am I really embodying the frequencies that I want more of? Am I adding more energy and momentum to the energies I want more of? Because what I want to say is, things come up that show us the absolute clusterfuck of energies that are happening on this planet. And it's actually not about this side or that side. It's like, that clusterfuck of energies is everywhere. It's all around. It's happening beneath the surface in a lot of different ways. But as long as we are trying to be blaming or in division, and I'm not saying that there's no responsibility to be taken. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that taking responsibility isn't important. It is extremely important. But I'm saying that all of these energies work together. And I'm saying that on an individual level for a moment, it's really important that we zoom out and we look at things not from an in the weeds perspective for a moment. Can we like zoom out and see everything that's going on and see all of the different ways that frequency is running, yes, on the planet, but that all starts individually. Like the way that energy runs on this planet is an expression of what's happening individually, at home, with ourselves, with our thoughts. That all is making those energies add together, and then there's more momentum, or then that's a living frequency on the planet, right? There's so much fear on the planet. There's so much friction. But here's the thing. I wrote this down, and I brought this just because I had all kinds of random things I was moving through. I had this moment where I was like, just really in my humanness, as we are, and I noticed myself and the tension in my body and the frustration in my body about things that I knew I had been doing that weren't working. It wasn't working for me. It wasn't feeling good for me. And I could just feel all that tension, and my soul just said really loudly, like, and I wasn't trying to figure it out, but I was just like, wow, I'm really in recognition of that, this tension and this frustration and this friction within myself. And I had a thought where I looked at certain things that I'd done over the last couple of months, and like, I'm like, wow, all of that was just the wrong direction. And I could feel like the friction in my body related to that. And then my soul came in really loudly and just said, but you know what to do next because of the friction. And I felt my body just relax into that awareness of, we learn through contrast, and it's not the only way to learn. I hope we don't always have to learn that way. I don't know, but we learn through contrast. And sometimes for me, the ways that I have known with such conviction which direction I want to go in, or what I want to do more of, is because I have spent enough time doing what does not work. And I feel the friction in my body, and then I am very sure this is not correct. But had I never tried, had I never just done something, then I would never know. And a lot of people stay in this place of never moving forward because they're thinking a lot about it, but they don't feel convicted either way. And the message in there was like, look, moving forward in friction is giving you an answer. Like, you're still getting an answer. As long as you move forward, you are getting the answer. And so the friction is going to tell you this is not the right direction, so let's do the other thing. And if there's no friction, great. Now I have another answer, which is this is correct. But it was like, there's no waste of time. And it's funny because as I'm saying this, I pulled this card like 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't sure what it was connected to. It was the vulture card in the spirit animal deck, and it said, I think it just said nothing is wasted. And the whole card was about how you never waste any time. You know, that nothing goes to waste. Like, everything going on in your life is gonna make itself useful at some point, essentially. And when I pulled that card a couple weeks ago, I was like, I don't really feel like I wasted any time. But then guess what happened over the last few weeks? Started doing things, and I was like, why in the heck did I do that? But it wasn't time wasted because that friction showed me the truth. And I think right now, I know for me on a personal level, and also when we look at things collectively, we have a really exciting opportunity to look at the friction and really look clearly at what is not working, and go layers deep. Go much deeper than we have before, because a lot of the analysis is so three-dimensional, and it's a continuation of the same frequency we've been in that has got us here, and we need higher perspective analysis. We do. And this is why my spiritual practice is so important for me. I think about, like, you know, how do you stay rooted and grounded in wild times? And on one level, it's like, I mean, you don't have to be rooted and grounded all the time, right? Like, it's normal to have times where you're not feeling that way, and you're emotional, and you're moving through that. But do we have healthy tools and practices to move through that? Do we have tools that allow us to actually alchemize and transmute? Most adults are walking around with the emotional competency of a 4-year-old throwing temper tantrums, and that's just not going to work for us to create a different reality for ourselves. And, you know, we're living in a really interesting time when we look at what's happening with AI, how that's going to shift intelligence, how that's going to shift confidence. And AI is an extreme multiplier. It's going to multiply. It's going to amplify a lot of traits that people have. It's going to create a much bigger gap between people. It's going to have a huge effect on our consciousness, depending on who uses it and who doesn't. And you're just going to see these gaps widening. I mean, think about, there are people that are like, screw this, I'm living off grid and I don't ever want internet again. And then you have people that are like, amazing, the future, let's lean into AI, let's learn how this works, let's have flying cars, like let's make it it's like, I mean, those are very different realities that you could be picking from. And I even think about just the reality of like, I mean, when they stopped teaching kids cursive in school, I'm like, that was wild. Or like, do they even teach kids how to read clocks with hands anymore? I don't know. Maybe they do, but in my head, I'm like, they probably don't, because it's not relevant. Or just math, like all of these different things, like what's going to be useful and what's not. And we're just at this really pivotal time where if we do not maintain our ability to critically think, we're screwed. And if we do not deepen within ourselves to do healing work and to really make a conscious effort to plug into and express higher consciousness, we will be fucked. We will be. And you're already seeing that with people. You're already seeing it play out. Like, you're seeing all of the stuff reflected back about what's running actively on the planet. And it's like, when we're looking at something, again, most people just go into like judgment or creating a story or like operating straight off their ego, off of what they're looking at, instead of like just taking a moment to be like, what else is here? Like, what's the deeper layer here? What's the deeper pattern? What could we actually learn about history? What can we see about the frequency of the planet, or what the planet is asking for from us? How can I rise into a higher frequency? Am I a vibrational reflection of this? Like, where in my life am I seeing this fighting energy, this fear-based energy, this judgment energy? We have to start looking at those things. But I know that in my most intense moments of like frustration or sadness or confusion, there's this breaking point for me, because it's almost like my brain, my human brain knows it can't figure this out, and it just surrenders to like, what is the bigger message here? And when we can actually open ourselves up and surrender to that bigger message, that is the opening into a higher level of consciousness. And so if you're feeling a lot of emotion, I know things have been really heavy, I would just invite you to think about like, what are the practices you have? What is your inner dialogue and your reflective practices? What are those like? Could you deepen that? Could you think a little bit more critically? Could you challenge yourself with higher viewpoints? And what I mean by this is, people lock into the logistic part of what's going on, and that's where you run in loops. But can you zoom out and think on a vibrational level, a frequency level, a psychological level that's not rooted in duality or right or wrong, but just exploration and curiosity of all of the energy that runs together? Because let's come back to like, we are all reflections of source, and source is everything. Source is all frequencies. So we're seeing all frequencies play out, and we're seeing them in dense forms. We're seeing them in heavy forms. But there also have to be light forms. And then what are we focusing on? And what we focus on, we add more energetic momentum to, and we start to create more of, and we're zooming into different parts of reality, different parts of the frequency bandwidth based on what we're focusing on. Like, that's how you zoom into it. And when we focus on other things, we zoom somewhere else. But here's the thing. Can I be faced with something that feels really dense, and instead of bypassing within that, find the higher frequency? Like, just sit with that. And I was thinking about this. I was in a massage yesterday while I was in my massage, having my usual conversation with the spirits. And, you know, I was really just like look, my human always has to wrap my brain around this a bit more around, okay, I understand how time works. I understand how the simulation works, and what I focus on expands, and I need to energize more of what I want. And there's also this, like, I'm not interested in bypassing. I'm not interested in overlooking. And like, how do I honor all of that? Like, how do I honor that? And you know what they said, I was really sitting with, and I'll just repeat some of this here. One was that they were saying the problem is literally how you're thinking about it is dualistic, and that's why it's not making sense to you. Two was, they said the work is not to look away from what's happening, but to look at it straight in the eye and alchemize it. And that was a big one. Look at it straight in the eye and then alchemize it. And three, well, these kind of go together. A reminder that our foundational beliefs are impacting how we see everything. We have really deep programs in our subconscious that are literally filtering how we perceive everything, and which thoughts and perspectives are even available to us, because we already have these filters that we're not even aware of because they run so deep. But on top of that is, they were pointing out that humans have deep conditioning that they have to collapse other people's emotions into their fields to be loving, to be compassionate, to see them. But when you do that, then you are dropping the frequency. And it was interesting because one of the things I had been reworking recently were things with my energetic perimeter. And I was noticing how, and this comes up with a lot of people, but I'm like, my perimeter will hold, but then it like resets. And that's just because some deeper coding in me needed to be adjusted. And I like figured it out, and it seems so obvious, but once I readjusted it, it changed, where it was like, okay, how come lower frequency things are breaking through with effort, but with higher frequency things, there could be like a wall. It's like if I set up a boundary, those higher frequency things are just like not even coming in because I set up the wall, but then somehow the lower frequency things are able to penetrate if they kick hard enough. And it was really just like, oh, well, some deep part of my coding, my programming from a young age, was allowing that to kick in hard enough, because I believe that if somebody kicked in hard enough, they could get through. Does that make sense? Like, I believed that because that was my experience. Like, if people kicked hard enough, they could get through. So then it created this belief of like, well, if people aren't kicking hard enough, then yeah, they're not going to get through. And higher frequency things aren't kicking hard enough. Like, they're just existing in vibrational resonance. They're not trying to push or force. And so it was like this really deep, and I went back to when I was 6 years old and was reworking that to like shift that perimeter and how that held. But they were like, this is directly connected to what I was just saying, that there's deep conditioning that we have to collapse other people's emotions into our field to be compassionate. Is it possible for us to be compassionate and loving and to see things without collapsing other people's emotions into our fields? And this goes hand in hand with an understanding of how emotion moves through, and how if somebody in the room is feeling an emotion, that's going to ping that frequency within me and it's going to vibrate. We're like tuning forks. And then I'm making a choice based on how I relate to that. If I am like, oh, I have this emotion now and I'm holding it in my field, versus, oh, Tyler over here has an emotion, and because we're like tuning forks, that just vibrated within me and I just let it vibrate and it moves out. But now this isn't me. But people will collapse that and hold that, and they start to collect it in their field. But now I am embodying that vibration, and my filter is limiting me in terms of my perception of everything that's coming based on that vibration that I have collapsed in my field and I'm embodying. So now I can only see from the energy of sadness, or from the energy of fear, from the energy of judgment, right? It's the same thing as the most critical people. What do we know about them? When people are walking around criticizing everybody, it's because they're critical of themselves. They're judging themselves, right? It's the same thing. When you're holding on to that and collapsing that into your field, you are locking yourself into that perspective. And you can even think about it like, okay, when I'm locking myself into the perspective of problem, I can't see the solution. The solution does not exist on the same frequency as the problem. But people are living in problems and they point out other problems. That doesn't create solution, right? I was listening to somebody talking about how, in other galaxies, in other universes, another model of democracy might look like, okay, we're all coming into a room together and we have something we want to transmute or fix in our society, and we're all just going to meditate on the highest frequency form of that alchemization, and where do we land, and we all just meditate on it together, and maybe spending however many minutes meditating on that, landing in that solution, and then bringing those solutions together, and then there you go. I mean, is that what people do? Not really. They try to find a solution from the energy of problem, which is inherently limited in terms of its creativity, about like the higher perspective that could come in. So I think it's a real reality check about the energies that we're locked into and the energies that we're choosing, but also our relationship with things that we witness and perceive, and how we collapse it into our field, but also what does compassion really mean. And I think we have to rework some of these definitions and relationships for us to be able to witness and see and have compassion and love, and also live in the energy of solution. And a lot of that for me comes back to this idea of alchemy. Like, this is coming up a lot. The guides have been talking to me about this a lot. Like, how do we actually live in that state of transmutation, and how do we live in that state of alchemy? I can't be alchemizing when I'm in the energy of judgment, of blame, of projection, of identification with anyone or anything. The second I have an identity I'm locked into about really anything, I am anchoring myself into those lenses, and I can't align with true creativity. The thing is, for a very different frequency to activate on this planet, we have to be embodying a really different frequency on an individual level. It's never going to happen from everybody pointing at everybody else, asking them to step up in terms of how they show up. So there's a real maturing, I think, that is the invitation coming forward for us. And this is why, right now we look at this huge spiritual awakening going on for a lot of people, because all of these lower dense frequencies, everything that people have been living with, they have to reveal themselves for us to start to alchemize the fear and the pain and the sadness and the stuckness and the limitation that we have been trying to work with, and trying to make the best of getting trapped in this box. And it's like the box has to break at some point. Energy has to break for us to start a new cycle. And the best thing that we can do is witness and reflect and show up individually from the frequency that we want to activate more of on the planet. And that's really simple, but like sometimes that's the best you can do. And again, all of these things that we learn on an individual level through our spiritual journey, like these are the things that can actually shift the planet. My question a lot of the times is I'm just looking at this and I'm like, where's the leadership? Like on the individual level, everybody on this planet gets to be a leader and in the energy of leadership. And being in the energy of leadership is not, we were saying this earlier, but it's like, it's not shaming people there. Like leaders are not effective when they're shaming people. And leaders are also not effective, I mean, really, with divine leadership when they are spewing projections or fear-based thoughts, or like putting people in greater division. And yeah, I just think that we have a really, really powerful opportunity to create something different, because we're hitting these friction points and these influx points, these forks in the road in a lot of areas in society, which is really mirroring where we're hitting a fork in the road within ourselves about like who we want to be and how we want to show up and how we want to live our lives. And I know I've been getting a lot of those messages of like, hey, maybe I've been kind of half in, half out. I'm like, you know, an 80-20 girl. And it's like, maybe I need to be 100% in a direction and like really choose my frequency. And that's a journey you get to be on. So however you're feeling, I'm sending you a lot of love. I do always find that like when I'm in the lowest of lows, there is eventually a doorway into the highest of highs. There's a huge quantum leap we get to make when we learn the lessons, like the real lessons, not the lessons the ego wants to be the lessons, the real lessons within ourselves when things are really hard. And that's how we start to unlock deeper and deeper levels of liberation in our lives. And it all does start with how each person individually shows up. So we'll see what February brings. And I hope it brings good things, because I'm ready for this horse energy. I'm ready for this horse energy. Let me know how you're feeling. But onward, hopefully upward. But feel out your feelings. That's the best you can do. So these are the times I really lean into my spiritual practice. As I said, it is what allows me to be in that energy of alchemy and stay connected to higher consciousness and not get swept away in the crazy shit happening in the collective. Being able to witness it, see it, and actually like kind of work with that and see like what's the deeper lesson, what's the higher way of showing up here, what do we actually need to get from this from a higher perspective, not just more of the 3D BS. So I definitely have a lot of great meditations to use at this time, so I'm going to call a few out. One, releasing other people's energy, 13 minutes, nice quickie, and the cord cutting and energy clearing will be really, really, really great. The other meditation that can be amazing right now, I'm just looking through the app, would be Cave of Truth meditation and Room of Mirrors meditation. These are really helpful for like getting to the deep layers, moving past the ego, moving past the mind, and like, what do I really, really need to know? What do I need to see that's much deeper? And then when we're going up to how do I plug in a higher perspective, I really recommend the Source Reconnection Guided Energy work. I absolutely love that. And I think, you know, if you are starting something new in your life, like I'm very much entering a new phase, and I think even more so than just entering the year, like I'm feeling it now. The starting a new cycle meditation is an amazing ritual for yourself. That one's a little bit longer, it's closer to 30 minutes, but that's a really nice like ritual to sit down and really move through, because it is a huge portal you can walk through with that meditation to really start a new energy in your life. And I think that's a really powerful commitment to make to yourself, to start a new energy in your life. To be like, hey, I'm going to actually really filter everything in my life through peace, or through humble honesty, or through non-judgment, and like really filtering our life in that way. I think a lot of times when we think about starting a new cycle, we're focused on like, it's my most abundant year. It's my most like, it's love, you know, it's kind of these exciting things. But like, what about the deeper layers of that, of like non-judgment? I mean, that would completely shift everything. Freedom, right? Authenticity, I think peace is a really important one, things like that. So those are some of the meditations. There's a ton of other really good ones in here. If you want to try it out, just go to christinathechannel.com/membership and you can use a 7-day free trial and try it out for free and then see if you enjoy it. Get the app. It makes it really easy. You can save all of your favorites. I use it every day. All right, guys, that's where I'll leave you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm sending you so much love, and I will chat with you again next time.